All right, so BTN is back for 2021. We're so glad that we can have another episode for you guys. We hope this will be helpful. We're going to talk about classroom management again today because we just did a survey and we're hearing that that's the still remains the area where most people are asking for help. So we're going to approach it from a fresh angle today, I hope. I just want to introduce my panel real quick. Let's start with you, Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Coates. I am the middle grades math coach. So I work in all the middle schools with math teachers.
Okay. And then we'll go to Miss Artis.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Artis. I'm an assistant principal at Lillington Shawtown Elementary School.
Okay. Michelle?
My name is Michelle Van Cannon, and I am a recruitment and retention coordinator.
And my sidekick.
Yes.
And good friend.
Hi, I'm Alicia Washington. I am also the recruitment and retention coordinator.
Yeah. All right. So today we're going to talk about classroom management. We knew management was going to be an issue this year because we have all of the kids back. And so last year, a lot of them were at home. Last year, teachers were able to mute them. It was not the same thing as having, a full classroom of kids in a face-to-face environment. So I'm going to start us off with a question or a topic, rather, about teacher demeanor. I was just thinking about the way that the teacher stands and the tone of their voice and their body language and that type of thing. I just sort of think that's real important when we talk about classroom management. And I just wanted to hear from the panel if you agree, first of all, that this is critical, why it's critical, and what it should look like. Let's start there. Does anybody have a response for this topic to kick us off? Okay, go ahead, Anna.
I just was thinking about the fact that it starts from the moment you and the students walk in the building, right? And so like one day I went to the bathroom and I stepped out of the bathroom and there was a teacher who was going, isn't it Friday yet? As all of these students were walking in the building. And so that was one of the very first things they heard from an adult in the school. And it was like a Tuesday. And so it kind of made me question, if the teacher doesn't want to be there, would the students want to be there? And what reaction are they going to get? And so your demeanor and your tone sets it for the day. And even if you don't want to be there, nobody needs to know that. You can tell your you can tell your teammates when it's a team meeting and the doors are shut and no student's going to hear you. But a student hearing a teacher saying they don't want to be here or looking like they don't want to be here sets that tone for their entire day.
I agree. Michelle?
Yeah, so I really feel like this topic, your demeanor, your posture, your nonverbal communication to the students, is an often overlooked classroom management tool with teachers, especially beginning teachers, because it is subtle, but it is also very powerful. You can communicate a lot with your face, your eyebrows, the way you just look at a child. They call it the teacher look, but if a child is doing a minor infraction, so maybe talking when they're not supposed to be, you can nip that in the bud with just that look. Without having to even say a single thing. If the class is doing something that you're not happy with, again, just your posture and your stance can communicate to the class that you're not happy with whatever behavior they're doing, and you can get it back on track quickly without having to make threats or anything like that, if you establish that with your class ahead of time. So I think that's something, it takes some practice, and it takes you have to be deliberate with it, especially while you're getting used to it. But I think it's often an overlooked strategy for classroom management that is worth you investing some time in as a beginning teacher.
So go ahead, Tiffany.
I agree with both Anna and Michelle and what they've said, but I also think sometimes professional dress is included with that, just making sure that they're taking you seriously. Not coming in t-shirt and, holy jeans, but, just the way you're dressed also communicates to the students that you're serious about their learning and you're really invested in it. And I think that's also going to play a part in your classroom management as well.
Yeah, I had a principal one time that told me, you have to look respectable if you want to be respected. And he was big on the men wearing ties, and that's why you see me in a tie a lot of the time, because that was drilled into me my first teaching job, that I needed to look respectable. And I think that's important. But I do think that a teacher has got to look like they're in charge. And I see some teachers that don't look like they're, that they feel like they're in charge. And so what does that look like, looking like you're in charge? Anybody want to answer that? Or what does it not look like? Because we have that part of the question too. What are some common mistakes that teachers make in this area? Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, so you're not going to be an effective you're not going to have effective classroom management if you're sitting behind your desk. That I can tell you right up front. You're the adult in the room, and so you should be consistently and constantly circulating throughout the room. That is, again, a very important technique strategy for classroom management. So in terms of what it does not look like a lot of shh, shh, shh from behind your desk. That's just not an effective technique.
Right. Anna?
And I'll add in that I feel like looking like you have a plan really plays in to looking like you're in charge, right? And so some of the best things I have seen are the people who you always know what the next thing is coming. Sometimes it's that you have the agenda on the board and you're like, this is what we're doing today, generally speaking. You can walk into a classroom and know, like I can walk into a classroom and know my expectation is to have my paper on my desk with my pencil and my calculator, and I have this much time to work on something because the expectations are out there for me. And I feel like it takes, like, it's that whole line of failing to plan is planning to fail. The people who are in charge have something for every minute, even if something went a little faster than they expected it to, they have that 5-minute activity that they can pull out that's educational, not just like for fun and for filling up time. They have something that they can do to reinforce or re-engage. And so having that plan in place and having the kids know that the students know that you have a plan, sometimes that helps too, because they've got a feel for what's going to happen that day.
Because if you don't have a plan, they're going to have a plan for you. I'm sorry, I didn't even raise my hand. I come from elementary school. Okay. I'm an elementary teacher all the way. I definitely agree. You definitely have to plan. And just, those teachers that's frowning, we talked about this early, frowning all the time. It's okay to smile. It's okay, definitely smiling. And as Michelle said, walking around the classroom, especially for my elementary teachers, that is very important, not to sit behind your desk, but walk around constantly.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thought. I was observing a teacher not too long ago, and I was just thinking to myself that the teacher didn't look confident. And so I think sometimes just standing up straight, and just look at having a confident posture, and I faked it until I made it, in the early days. Like I might have inside been a little nervous about what was going to happen, but I tried to walk into the room standing up tall and speaking confidently, sounding like I knew what I was talking about, even if sometimes I wasn't sure. I think that's important to come across as confident. And I think the kids can sense the weakness, and especially in certain grade levels, they will exploit that. So I think just, and you could probably Google, how to appear confident, and get some ideas, but I think it's just your posture and, when you're kind of talking to them like this and, you're like, I just don't know how effective that might be, but I'm going to move on to our second topic. Thank you for those responses. The second topic, I wanted y'all to think of a teacher that a specific teacher, and you don't have to say their name, but just think about a teacher that that has excellent management. And once you have that person in your mind, I wanted to know, what do they do? What is it? What are some of the things that they do? And what are some things that they don't do? Tiffany?
So for one, they start off strong. They establish those expectations, their classroom routines and procedures. They do that early on, and they don't just do it quickly. I think a lot of teachers feel like at the beginning of the year, they need to jump right in and start with instruction. But what they don't realize is if you don't have a command of your classroom, as you get later in the year, you're not going to be able to instruct because you're going to be addressing behaviors. So it's better to take that time in the beginning to, make sure they are following what you ask them to do. They're following your expectations. And if they're not, then it's okay to stop and refresh them again, even if it's 3 weeks into school. But I think a lot of teachers feel like, oh, I got to really get in and start instructing, that's what it's all about. But if you do not have classroom management, you're not going to have any instruction all year. So just taking the time to really get it in students' minds that this is how our classroom runs. This is how we do this. But making sure that they know what they're doing, but also being consistent and fair and equitable. Students are very smart. They pick up on things. They pick up on whether or not we make, have a little bit of angst about them. So always, appear that you're going to at least be fair with everyone. I think that's very important.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Alicia.
I think also all those things that Ms. Artis said is totally true. And also having the clutter-free classroom. I think that is very important. Clean up your classroom. Your classroom is a reflection of you. An organized classroom is not only beneficial for teachers, it's definitely for students. They benefit from it as well. It promotes a relaxed environment where they can focus and they can learn. And it's just, I believe a clutter-free classroom is definitely a part of classroom management.
Anna?
I think too, it goes back to kind of what I was saying about having a plan and having engagement. Sometimes I feel like it's not a classroom management issue. Sometimes it's a classroom engagement issue. And I was talking to a teacher the other day who I kept telling her, I was like, your classroom management is wonderful. Like they listen to you. Like when you ask them to come back together, they do it almost instantaneously. And she was like, but they talked after I told them to do an assignment. And I said, but first they did the assignment and then they talked. So it was that your assignment was too short for the time that they needed. And so I think that's again where it's, oh, we're done with the assignment. Let's do this next thing. And always having what comes next, because like I said, those students did exactly what she asked silently, did their task, did it well. But when they were done, they talked. And so I think that it is that having a plan for every minute and what you can do, because it is sometimes not the management, it's that that's what they're doing because they don't have something else to do.
It's a sluggish pace. I think the sluggish pace is a major problem in a lot of classrooms that I go into is, yeah. And I know, Anna, you're a fan of using timers and things to keep it.
That's what I was about to say is like, I wish day one, somebody had said, get a timer and set it, right? Like bell ringers, when we walk in, there should be this amount of time. And I actually was talking to a teacher about it. I left her the suggestion. She did it. And she was like, Anna, they got it done in like a quarter of the time it usually takes them. And it was because it was a distinct, she was going to stick to it and they had to stick to it. And I will say with the timer, I did talk to somebody and she was like, but what if they get intimidated by it? I was like, it's not to be an ogre. It's hey, I've done this assignment and I figured out about how long it should take me to do it. So I'm giving you this amount of time. We'll check back in, but this is when we're going to check back in. But yeah, biggest thing in my world was starting to use a timer and saying, we get this amount of time and me sticking to it and them sticking to it and having them be able to see, because they start to learn that. I think sometimes we assume that students know to stay on task for X amount of time or that this task should take X amount of time. And we are not explicitly teaching them, oh, it should take you, but we're giving them those tools to manage themselves and know what to do with that time.
Yeah, I was a lateral entry teacher when I started. And I remember my first year, I was struggling to come up with things to fill the time because I didn't have that arsenal yet. So I do think that, that building the strategy, the curriculum strategies and the engagement strategies and different things, that it comes with experience. And so I think you can't divorce the management from the lesson plan and the activities that you got planned. Anybody else? Michelle?
So I just want to add everything that the group has said so far. I absolutely second that. But you asked at the beginning, think of a teacher that has good classroom management, and quite a few teachers popped in my head. And something that they all have in common is that they don't ignore small behavior infractions. So I think a mistake that beginning teachers often make is they ignore the small stuff because they just don't want to get into that power struggle with kids, or they don't want the confrontation, because confrontation is difficult. But those teachers that are successful classroom management technicians, if you want to call them that, they address those things early on in the year and before they escalate into something bigger. Because what you'll find with experience is that if you ignore those behaviors, they will escalate. And then you've got a big problem on your hand, and you're going to be asking yourself, why didn't I nip this in the bud earlier?
Can I add on to that? I think it's also thinking about how they nip that in the bud, right? Like, it's not always that I see that little misbehavior over there, and so I yell at Greg from across the room, hey, Greg, you need to stop that. Right? Like, sometimes it's that I go over and I have a private conversation with them, because the more you do it for everybody to see, it does a lot of bad, right? Like, it makes that kid nervous. It makes the other kid nervous that they're going to get called out like that and they don't want to do it. And so it is establishing that respectful thing of, hey, Greg, like, that's not going to work in this classroom for this reason, not just blasting them from across the room.
Discipline with dignity. You don't ever, I tell teachers all the time, the biggest mistake you can make is to embarrass them in front of their peers. They do not, think about it. You don't want to be embarrassed in front of your peers. So always discipline with dignity. Another thing that when I think about a teacher with good classroom management is they build relationships. They build relationships with their students. You don't have to be their best friend. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying at least speak to them. When they come in the morning, good morning. I know some days we're living in a challenging time right now, and we all have those, bad days. But whatever we're going through, sometimes we have to leave it outside. And we come in the classroom, we're good morning, guys, because just like we're going through this pandemic, the students are too. Especially our lower elementary, they're having a hard time trying to understand what's going on. And so sometimes that behavior is the result of that. So just the build relationships is very important. Speak to them when they're leaving, just, hey, how you doing? How's things going? Just checking in with them.
I was thinking about, some really good teachers that have excellent management that I've seen since I've been an instructional coach. And one thing they all had in common was high expectations and daily routines. And that's not that we get into a rut and do the same thing every day, but it was the kids come in, we do our warm up, now we do this, now we do that. And it's like a well-oiled machine. So I do think establishing daily routines helps, and having a high bar. Which I can't talk about enough. We've got to have high expectations. So I'm going to move on to the last topic. The last topic is a cliche discussion, but a lot of truth to it. I always say, or I've heard said, it's easier to lighten up than to tighten up. I was told that when I was a young teacher. It's easier to lighten up than to tighten up. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But I want to talk today, ask the panel, is it possible to tighten up once the kids are out of control? And if so, what are some things that you could do to maybe try to tighten up a little bit? We're in that month of the year where we need to tighten up, because some people, I see people that need to tighten up. Okay. And some of them might be thinking, oh, I'm just trying to get through to Christmas. Well, it's still many weeks to Christmas. So any thoughts about how what teachers could do, beginning teachers especially, if they sense their class is out of control, what should they do? Or what could they do? Alicia,
I think go back to your rules and your procedures. I think it's okay to say, all right, guys, this is not working. This is what we're going to do now. And then just being consistent and stick with it. It's been times throughout the years of my teaching that I had to start over. It was November. Things wasn't working out. And like Greg said, I can't just wish my days away or think, oh, just let me get to December. I mean, I still have 30 more days left. So I brought all my students to the carpet and I said, all right, guys, we're going to start over. It's going to be it's like the first day of school all over again. And they were looking at me like, and, while I was explaining that, I was standing up because we talked about demeanor, and I was like, things are going to be different now in Miss Washington's classroom, and they understood me and they took me serious. I know they was looking at me like, this is not the person I seen before months ago. The other person was laughing and giggling with us. And now this is someone's different. But I mean, I think it's okay to start over and say, all right, we're going to start looking at our rules and our procedures again. And we're going to constantly go over them each and every day. We're not going to go over them Monday and Tuesday, not saying anything Wednesday. No, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You're going to keep going over it until they understand, until they get it.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
I was trying to think of an analogy to kind of compare it to. It's all about science. Like if you think about water, whenever they're trying to build a dam, it takes a lot to try to contain that water. But once they get it under control, it's easier for them to release water when they need to. So it's just like with classroom management. If you spend time on it at the beginning of the year, establishing those routines and procedures and what your expectations are, as you go throughout the year, it's going to be easier to kind of lighten up. But it's like Alicia said, you're just going to have to start all the way over and have that conversation with students and include them whenever you're talking about what the expectations are for the classroom. Because, we all know that once they have a part in, establishing what their classroom is like, they're going to become owners of it. And I think they'll take to it more. But it's definitely easier to loosen up once you've tightened, after you've tightened up, but it's a lot harder to do the opposite.
Anna?
I think sometimes too, it's not about changing everything all at once because that's overwhelming for everybody. And so sometimes it's about saying, okay, what is the one thing that is the biggest problem? And what am I going to do to fix that one thing and focus on that? Because a lot of times it could be, well, I could fix this, 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 and this. And I try to do it all and I fail at all of them. But if I start with this one because it's big and it's going to make the biggest impact and I focus on it and we get there and the students understand it, then I can focus on this one. And then I can add in that one. And so I think sometimes, as much as sometimes it's really helpful to do a massive overhaul, let's start back from day one. Sometimes it's about attacking something small, big, something, a thing, and getting that right. Because there needs to be that follow through and that follow up. So if I say we're going to work on these 5 things, but I only can focus on 3 because that's all the energy I have and that's taking everything, then those 3 are going to be the things that change and the other 2 aren't. So sometimes I think it's about being strategic in what's the biggest, most important thing to change and really focusing on that one for a little bit, then adding in another.
No, I was definitely agreeing with Anna because I want, when everyone is viewing this video, I don't want you to think, and I'm glad Anna made that statement that, oh, these are all the things we're going to work on. You choose 1 or 2 things and then you talk to your students about it. As I was reflecting last night, I noticed that this was not working for us anymore. So this is what I'm coming to the conclusion of, and I want you guys to help me with it. So, giving them input on it.
I've started by rearranging the room and doing a new seating chart. And I think that's a very practical, effective thing that you can do just to change the air. And so I see a lot of teachers who still don't want to have a seating chart. That's just a pet peeve of mine. Have them sit where you want them to sit, and then if they get lazy and they come in and they sit in the wrong seat, you've got to move them. You can't, once you let a couple sit in the wrong seat, then everybody's going to be choosing their own seat. Anna?
And I think sometimes it pays to be that person a lot of times, all the time. That should not be sometimes, right? Like all of the time it pays to be the person who has the high expectations. And I think back to when I was teaching for the first month or two of the year, the students in the other classes would look at my students and they'd be like, you have the meanest teacher on the face of the planet. And then 2 or 3 months in, they'd go, why are you getting to do such cool things? And it was because I knew they could handle it because they had the behaviors I needed. And so sometimes it seems really tough at the beginning and the students are pushed back and are hard about it, but then you get to do the cool stuff because nobody's going to do a lab with kids that are hanging off the ceiling. Nobody's going to pull out the math manipulatives when you think that they're going to be flying across the room. You get to do the cool stuff when you know your students can handle it. And so sometimes it takes some of that, and sometimes it takes giving those little perks of like, hey, we were having that problem with people staying in their seats, but now that I know you're staying in your seats, we're going to do this, which we couldn't have done had you not done it. And so it's also having that balance of engagement and cool activities to reward, but not reward the students for behaving in a way that you wanted them to.
Okay, Michelle.
Well, and just to piggyback off of what Ms. Coates was saying, the other children might have perceived Ms. Coates as the mean teacher, but it's not that she's mean, because we're not talking about hollering at children. We're not talking about humiliating them through your behavior strategies. You're just being firm. You're setting expectations. You're holding the students accountable for those expectations, while at the same time being respectful to them by maybe having those one-on-one conversations about their behaviors. And you're building those relationships. You're getting to know them. What are their likes? What are their interests at the same time? So the other class didn't see that Ms. Coates was doing all that. They just saw the mean teacher, but that's what was really going on behind the scenes. And that's what we mean by coming in. How did you phrase it, Greg? Coming in a little tougher at the very beginning and then lighting up, you know what I'm trying to say, with them a little bit. So please understand, mean, the kids may say you're mean, you're not being mean, you're being firm. You're holding them accountable for your expectations. That's not mean, that's good teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes if you just make them do a little work, they say you're mean. Go ahead, Miss Artis.
And that's, I think a lot of new teachers have that misconception that that it's being mean. And like you both said, it's not being mean, it's being firm and consistent, and it's going to pay off in the long run. It's not being mean, definitely. So I'm glad you both said that.
And one final practical suggestion, I think, if you're trying to reboot or do a reset, is to have a round of parent conferences or guardian, whoever they live with. Sometimes we get busy, we forget to schedule those. Sometimes it's, amazing the different child you'll see after having a good conversation with somebody at home. And so I think that's another practical thing that we can do for a reboot. But we're out of time. Any final thoughts? Did anybody have a final thought before we sign off? So I just want to thank today's panel. I know your time is so valuable. Thank you for being here. I know this will help our beginning teachers, and we're going to sign off for now for BTN. Let us know if you need help.